Tyler had been out of work for nearly 3 months, and the weight of it was starting to show in everything he did. He was tired all the time, eating less, and sleeping with one eye open as bills piled up on the kitchen counter. He'd been applying to any job that even remotely matched his skills: tech support, help desk, freelance gigs, anything with a paycheck. He'd lost track of how many resumes he'd sent out. So when an email popped up one Monday morning with the subject line, "Interview," "Invitation, Orion Solutions," he felt a jolt of cautious excitement. The company name didn't ring a bell, but that wasn't unusual. Most listings were buried among dozens of similar ones, and at this point, he was shooting off applications almost on autopilot. What mattered was that someone had responded. Email was well-written, professional, and polite. It thanked him for his interest, said they'd reviewed his background, and wanted to set up an interview for a Tier 2 IT support position. It mentioned remote work possibilities, flexible hours, and full benefits after a probation period. Tyler's eyes lingered on that part, benefits. It had been months since he'd seen a health plan. There was a link to a basic company website. It looked generic but not fake. Stock photos, a contact form, a short About Us page, and a list of vague services like enterprise system support and network optimization. The site even had a clickable LinkedIn icon, which led to a bare but existing company profile with a few employees listed, none with profile pictures, but still, it seemed real enough. Then he noticed something strange. The interview was scheduled for 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it wasn't a phone or Zoom call, it was in person at a shared office space across town. The building name was familiar, a co-working spot downtown that he'd walked past before but never been inside. The time threw him off. Most companies didn't do late-night interviews, especially not for IT jobs. It wasn't unheard of, but it was definitely unusual. Tyler reread the email, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they worked with overseas clients? Maybe the hiring manager was in a different time zone. He decided to reply and ask. He kept it polite. "Thanks for the opportunity. Just confirming, is 7:30 p.m. the correct time? Just want to be sure." The response came 10 minutes later, signed by someone named Clara M. from Human Resources. It read, "Yes, 7:30 p.m. is correct. Due to global operations and international clients, evening interviews are standard procedure. We appreciate your flexibility and look forward to meeting you in person." Something about the phrasing rubbed him the wrong way. Evening interviews are standard procedure. It sounded robotic, like something copy-pasted. But still, he couldn't afford to be picky. He had less than $200 in his account, rent due next week, and no prospects in sight. If this was legit and he had no concrete reason to believe it, wasn't then maybe it was finally a break. The next day, he shaved, printed out a fresh resume, and planned his evening around the appointment. He checked the building's location again, just a 20-minute bus ride. He even looked up reviews of the co-working space online. They were mostly positive, though none mentioned Orion Solutions. Still, that wasn't strange. Smaller companies didn't always leave a big digital footprint, especially in IT. He tried to reassure himself. Not everything unusual was sinister. Maybe they were just new. Maybe they valued working at night. Hell, maybe it meant they were flexible and forward-thinking. But all day, a quiet unease tugged at him. A subtle whisper in the back of his mind that something didn't add up. By late afternoon, the city was starting to dim as clouds rolled in, heavy and gray. It looked like rain, but Tyler didn't bring an umbrella. He dressed in a clean button-down slacks and his least scuffed shoes. At 6:50 p.m., he left his apartment. As he walked toward the bus stop, he noticed how quiet everything felt. The streets were empty in a way that didn't feel right, not peaceful, but still. The kind of stillness that comes before a storm. Got to the building at exactly 7:24 p.m. The sun was almost gone, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The co-working space didn't look abandoned, but it didn't look active either. No lights in the windows. No one smoking outside. No buzz of voices or clicking keyboards. Just a door with a printed sign that read "Open" in faded red letters. And a keypad that didn't require a code. He stepped inside. The hallway was dim and quiet. Fluorescent lights flickered on as he walked past, one by one, triggered by motion sensors. The walls were painted beige. The air smelled faintly of dust. And something older, like a room that had been closed up for too long. He spotted a handwritten note taped to the front desk. Orion Solutions Interview, Room 3 BTHE. Writing was neat. All caps and done in blue marker. No receptionist. No people. Just Tyler, alone in a strange building, following instructions. From someone he'd never seen. For a job he'd barely remembered applying to. He looked at the note again, heart starting to pound. Then he walked down the hall. Tyler walked deeper into the building, the hallway narrowing slightly as he passed rows of closed doors. Each step echoed off the walls and concrete floor, making him feel like someone or something was following just out of sight. The motion sensor lights blinked on above his head one by one, casting sharp white light that made the shadows seem even darker between the doorways. Everything about the place felt off. It wasn't dirty, but it had the kind of stillness that didn't belong in an active office space. There was no hum of conversation, no typing, no printers, not even the occasional clack of someone walking in another room. The silence was thick, broken only by the low buzzing of fluorescent lights and the distant ticking of a wall clock somewhere behind him. Room numbers were printed on the doors, in black vinyl, and as he walked past them, he noticed they all looked nearly identical, plain, gray, and shut tight. Some had little glass windows, most of which were dark or covered. One window had a jagged crack running down it. Another had a smudge across the inside that looked like handprints, greasy and blurred, like someone had tried to wipe them away, but only made it worse. Something about that one made him pause. He stared at the marks for a second too long before shaking it off and moving on. He kept his eyes on the room numbers. 3A, then 3B. He stopped in front of it. The door was cracked open just a few inches. Not enough to see inside clearly, but enough to know someone was expecting him. He raised his hand and knocked softly, trying to sound professional, even though his voice was caught somewhere in his throat. There was no answer. He knocked again. "Hello, it's Tyler. I'm here for the 7:30 interview." Still nothing. He gently pushed the door open and leaned in. The room was small, maybe 10 feet across, with low ceilings and a faint chemical smell, something like Windex or old carpet cleaner. There were no windows, just a desk, 2 chairs, and a laptop already open on the far side, its screen casting a pale blue glow in the dark room. One of the chairs was pulled out slightly, as if someone had been sitting there and just stepped out for a moment. Everything else was perfectly still. No papers, no pens, no signs of activity. He hesitated in the doorway. Then curiosity or desperation got the better of him, and he stepped inside. He stood for a moment before approaching the desk, noting how quiet it was. He could hear his own breathing, even his heartbeat. The laptop screen displayed a simple message in bold, white text against a black background. "Please take a seat. The interview will begin shortly." There was no cursor blinking, no software logo, just those words motionless. Tyler sat down in the chair closest to the door, pulling it in slowly, not taking his eyes off the screen. He waited. 2 minutes passed, then 5. The longer he sat there, the more he noticed little details that made him uneasy. The air in the room was too still. The kind of stillness you only notice when there's absolutely nothing moving, not even air from a vent. There were no outlets on the walls, no clock, and no thermostat. Just the laptop and the camera mounted on the far wall. Up in the corner. At first, he thought it was just part of the building. But then he realized it didn't match the others. He'd seen in the hallway it was older, covered in dust, with a single red light glowing beneath the lens, watching. Recording. He turned to look back at the door. It had closed. He didn't hear it shut. Didn't feel a draft, but it was definitely closed now. He stood up and crossed the room to check the handle. It turned, but only slightly. Locked. That was the moment Tyler's body tensed up. Something was wrong. He looked back at the laptop, half expecting the message to be gone, but instead, the screen had changed. Now it showed a video feed, a grainy, black and white live view from the corner of the room. The same room he was in. The feed was of him, standing in front of the door, staring at the screen. He turned to look at the far wall where the camera was mounted, then looked back at the laptop. It was him. Not delayed, not a recording, a live feed. But the laptop itself had no camera, no webcam on the bezel, just the glowing screen. His breath caught in his chest. He backed up slowly and sat down again. Maybe this was some high-tech interview test. Maybe they were watching remotely. Maybe it was part of a behavioral assessment. Then again, maybe it wasn't. He glanced around the room again, feeling the walls shrink in just a little. There were no logos, no branding, no emergency exit sign. The kind of small, critical details you never notice until they're gone. His phone was in his pocket, but he didn't want to pull it out yet. Something told him to wait. The laptop suddenly flickered. The feed disappeared for a second, and then the screen went black. For a brief moment, he saw his own reflection in it, eyes wide, breath shallow. Then the screen lit up again with a new message. Interview in progress. Do not leave the room. Tyler's heart sank. The tone had changed. He turned the doorknob again. Harder this time. Still locked. And now the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full. Like something else was in the building, watching, moving, listening. He leaned in closer to the screen. His own face stared back, and the camera light glowed just a little brighter. Tyler sat frozen in the chair, staring at the laptop screen as the eerie message burned itself into his thoughts. Interview in progress. Do not leave the room. The room felt colder now. Or maybe it was just his nerves catching up with him. He rubbed his palms against his legs and tried to reason with himself. Maybe it was just a dramatic setup. Some companies tried unconventional methods during hiring, psychological tests, stress environments, tech puzzles. Maybe this was some odd attempt to simulate a high-pressure situation. But deep down, Tyler knew this was different. It wasn't clever or edgy, it felt wrong. Wrong in the kind of way that settles in your stomach and doesn't move. Then, without warning, the screen flickered again. The static blinked for just a second before the camera feed returned, but now it wasn't showing Tyler anymore. Instead, the video displayed another angle of the room. A strange, slightly tilted view like a low corner of the ceiling. The desk was visible, and so were the chairs, but there was something else. A faint shadow along the back wall. Not his. It didn't move. Didn't shift with the lighting. It was just there, like a stain. He turned in his chair to glance behind him, but the wall was bare. When he looked back at the screen, the shadow was gone. A voice crackled from the laptop speaker, distorted and robotic. It sounded like it was coming through multiple layers of static, like someone trying to talk through a broken intercom. "Good evening, Tyler," it said slowly, with odd pauses between the words. "Thank you for coming in person." Tyler blinked, surprised. by how mechanical the voice sounded. It didn't feel like a person talking to him. It felt programmed, artificial. "Yeah," he answered, his voice shaky. "Happy to be here." He tried to smile, just in case someone was watching on the other end. But inside, he was beginning to panic. The voice returned, asking, "What are your skills?" It didn't feel like a real question. It was like it had been pulled from a template. But Tyler responded, trying to play along, listing his experience with networking, system administration, remote tech support. He even mentioned the online certifications he'd taken while out of work. He talked for about a minute straight, but the voice didn't interrupt or acknowledge anything he said. When he finished, there was just silence. Then the camera angle changed again. Another live feed popped up. This time it showed a hallway, dimly lit, long and lined with doors. The same hallway Tyler had walked through just minutes earlier. The angle was low, like it was being filmed from somewhere close to the floor. The feed was grainy, but he could make out the flickering lights and the cracked window he'd seen. On the way in, something moved on the screen. A shape dark blurry crossed the hallway in the background. It was too quick to get a clear look, but Tyler knew it wasn't him. He was still sitting in the room. That meant someone or something was out there. His hands were cold now, fingertips numb. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. No signal. No bars. No Wi-Fi. Just a faint glow from the screen and a single blinking notification he didn't recognize. Orion remote access. Pending. He didn't tap it. He didn't want to know what would happen if he did. Instead, he shoved the phone back into his pocket and stood up. "Hello?" He called out, raising his voice. "Is this part of the interview? I think I'd like to leave now." No response. The camera on the wall still blinked its little red light. The laptop screen changed again. This time it showed a full shot of the room, like security footage from the ceiling corner. He saw himself on screen, standing in the exact position he was in. The feed lagged slightly, then caught up. It was him. Real dash time. Then came the sound. It was soft at first, a distant dragging noise, like something heavy sliding slowly along the floor, too slow to be footsteps. It was muffled but unmistakable, and it was coming from the hallway. Tyler turned to face the door, heart pounding now, blood rushing in his ears. The dragging stopped for a second, then resumed, a few feet closer this time. His breath caught. He tried the door again. Still locked. His fingers trembled as he twisted the handle uselessly. He backed away, eyes wide, glancing from the door to the laptop where the hallway feed had returned. On the screen, he saw the figure again, closer this time. A shadow, low to the ground, just barely visible at the edge of the hallway camera's range. It moved like it was crawling slow, deliberate, without any sound except that awful dragging noise. It turned a corner, and for a second, it looked like it paused in front of room 3B. Right outside. Tyler stumbled backward, bumping into the desk. The screen went black again. Then a new message appeared, centered in the middle, glowing red against the black. You were selected. His mouth went dry. Selected for what? The words made no sense, but something inside him screamed to get out. He slammed his fist against the door. Let me out. Let me out. His voice cracked with panic. The lights above him flickered once, then twice, and then shut off completely. He was left in total darkness, and just outside he heard the dragging stop. Tyler stood in complete darkness, the silence pressing against him like a weight. His breathing was the only sound he could hear now, ragged and fast, echoing too loudly in the small room. The lights had gone out so suddenly it felt like someone had flipped a switch, not just in the room, but in reality itself. He backed into the desk, his hands trembling as they searched blindly for something, anything to hold on to. The laptop screen was no longer glowing. It had gone black, and now it felt like just another piece of dead plastic in a room that wasn't meant to be alive in the first place. The silence didn't last long. There was a soft creak, then another. The door. It wasn't a knock. It was slower than that, more careful. Like something was leaning on it, or maybe sniffing around the edges. Tyler pressed himself against the far wall, as far from the door as he could go. He didn't want to move. He didn't want to breathe. But the sound was too much. There was movement on the other side, like a shuffle of limbs dragging across the floor, a slow, scraping pull that sent ice down his spine. Then, with a sharp click, the lock turned. He heard it. So clear, so deliberate. The doorknob began to turn, metal grinding softly under pressure. And then it stopped. Not all the way open. Not all the way closed. Just pause. Tyler stared through the darkness, eyes wide, but he couldn't see a thing. He waited, every muscle in his body tense, ready to bolt or scream or fight, but nothing came. No footsteps. No more dragging. No voice. The door never opened. Instead, the laptop screen suddenly blinked back on. No startup sound. No logo. Just a frozen image, black and white, low quality, like a still from an old surveillance camera. At first, Tyler couldn't understand what he was looking at. The angle was strange, skewed, like it was filmed from the ceiling. Then he saw it, a man. Sitting in the same chair he had been sitting in earlier. Same room, same desk. Except this. Man was slumped forward, his head tilted unnaturally to one side. His face wasn't visible, just the back of his head, matted hair, and something dark dripping down from his neck onto the collar of his shirt. Tyler stared in horror. Then the image flickered and changed. Another room. Another person. This one? A woman, maybe mid-30s, hunched over a laptop that looked exactly like his. Her eyes were wide, mouth frozen mid-scream. She wasn't moving. Then another image. And another. More rooms. More people. All still. All inside this same building. All gone. Tyler covered his mouth, choking down a scream. He backed away from the screen slowly, stepping toward the door again, desperate now. His hand reached out, shaking, and this time the knob turned. Not locked anymore. He pulled it open just a crack and nothing was there. No shadow. No crawling thing. Just the dark hallway beyond. Still, he didn't feel safe. His instincts were screaming. Every step down that hallway would be a gamble, but staying felt worse. He pushed the door open fully and stepped out into the corridor. The lights above flickered, then stayed dim. Just enough to see the next 10 feet ahead. He walked fast, trying not to look at the doors around him, trying not to think of what might be behind them. He passed the cracked window again. This time, the smudge on the glass was different. Not greasy handprint scratches. Deep ones, like fingernails. 5 of them, curved like someone had clawed at the inside from behind the glass. He kept walking. When he reached the front of the building, the lobby was exactly how he left it. Empty, silent, that same. Handwritten notes still taped to the desk. He didn't stop to look at it. He pushed through the front door into the night and nearly collapsed on the sidewalk. The street was empty. No cars, no people. Just wind and distant traffic sounds echoing from farther downtown. Tyler looked back at the co-working building. No lights, no movement. Just a dull, dead structure. Sitting under streetlights that didn't seem quite bright enough. He ran, didn't wait for the bus. Just kept walking, then running, then walking again, until he was nearly 2 miles away. When he finally stopped, he pulled out his phone. The Orion remote access. Pending notification was gone. Full bars again. Wi-Fi back on. Everything looked normal. Like nothing had happened. He tried Googling Orion solutions. No results, not even cached pages. The company site was gone, the LinkedIn page? Gone. No record of Clara M. No office leasing records for the building. It was like none of it had ever existed. Tyler didn't go home right away. He sat on a bench in a crowded plaza near a 24-hour diner, surrounded by real people, noise, life, and he didn't sleep that night. Weeks passed. He never told anyone the full story. He tried, once, to a friend. Got halfway through and realized how crazy it sounded. Like a nightmare he'd made up. He stopped applying for jobs after that. Took temp work, remote gigs only. Nothing in person. Nothing late at night, but sometimes, when he's working late and the house is quiet, he still hears the soft scraping of something just outside his office door. And every now and then, his phone lights up with a notification that vanishes before he can read it. The only word he ever catches is always the same: selected.